Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Ronnie Reisberg, and I am honored to serve as chair of this year's Kristallnacht commemoration. On behalf of the Jewish Federation, thank you for tuning into today's program. The mission of the Jewish Federation is to strengthen Jewish life, culture, and identity in our community, provide for Jewish people in need, and promote support for Israel. We fulfill our mission by supporting programs and projects that care for the vulnerable in Sarasota-Manatee, in Israel, and around the world. We build community through strong relationships with partners in education, cultural arts, social services, and other area nonprofit organizations. Our Federation has a long-standing commitment to Holocaust education, which is ever more vital in our contentious society. Through events such as this afternoon's, we honor the memory of those who perished and those who survived to tell their stories, so that we may never forget our past. We support our schools and encourage them to educate the next generation about the lessons of the Holocaust, to create a world without prejudice and without hate. The current rise of anti-Semitism and anti-other vitriol is beyond ominous, and our community must heed its warning. We are the proverbial canaries in the coal mine. We must continue the path of reaching out to build awareness and educate our world toward the basic truth of human value. We must support our Federation and other community organizations that embrace this mission of educating the world about the Holocaust, the most heinous of all crimes committed against humanity. Kristallnacht is often called the beginning of the Holocaust, although the insidious seeds of anti-Semitism were already being planted for centuries before in both many societies around the world and indeed in the German culture. The Night of Broken Glass, known to Germans as Kristallnacht, was the first nationwide eruption of the German masses against the Jewish minority. On November 9, 1938, anti-Semitism exploded throughout Germany in a pogrom where 91 people, mostly merchants, were murdered, while countless millions of dollars of damage was perpetrated against synagogues, German Jewish citizens, and Jewish-owned properties with violence and rage. Thousands of store windows were smashed. Hundreds of homes, hospitals, schools, and Jewish places of worship were set on fire or ransacked. More than 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and taken to concentration camps. This year is the 84th anniversary of this portentous and infamous moment in our history, which, to many historians, marked the terrifying beginning of Hitler's murderous campaign. And sadly, we all know the unfortunate middle and end of that particular story. Today, while we commemorate and pay tribute to the history of our past, we must always remember that history can repeat itself. We are seeing a resurgence of anti-Semitism, of name-calling, intimidation, threats, violence, and persecution being perpetrated by those who still hold those beliefs, the beliefs of conspiracy theories whose seeds were planted so many years ago and whose roots are so deeply embedded and woven into the fabric of a dark sector of our society today. Educating about the Holocaust and its lessons that can be learned is more important than ever to help combat today's insidious resurgence of anti-Semitism. We must teach our champions of the future, our children, to stand up, to resist, reject, and refute all expressions of hatred. We are honored and humbled to bring you a program that addresses this very issue, combating anti-Semitism through Holocaust education. Our program this afternoon will begin with the Bayshore High School Chorus, followed by an invocation by Rabbi Paul Schreiber, also known as Reb Tuvia, from Temple Bethel in Bradenton, followed by Lindsay Mintz, Federation's Director of Community Engagement, who will share a few words. We will then welcome Attorney Michael Eagle, who, among his many responsibilities, has taken on the role as chair of the State of Florida's Education Commissioner's Task Force on Holocaust Education and chair of the Florida Holocaust Museum. Later, Dr. Stephen Covert, principal of Pineview School, will share regarding the great task his journalism and film students have embarked upon in preserving the legacy and stories of our local Holocaust survivors through essays and on film. In addition to listening to our anthems beautifully sung by the Bayshore High School Chorus, we will have the pleasure of hearing from virtuoso violinist Nathan Meltzer, the Federation's own vocalists Lisa Feynman, Trudy Crames, and Jessie Sheslow. Later in the program, we will have the unique privilege of hearing the story of one of our local survivors, Helga Melmed, introduced by Ann Stein, the coordinator of the Federation's Holocaust Speakers Bureau. Helga lived through Kristallnacht and survived the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust. Our program will conclude with Cantor Matt Osterklein's El Maleh Rachamim and Rabbi Tuvia's recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. And now, the Bayshore High School Chorus.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red and the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good afternoon. My name is Reb Tuvia, Rabbi of Temple Bethel in Bradenton and Lakewood Ranch. It is an honor and a privilege to be speaking here today. In the days leading up to this, the 84th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, I found myself thinking a lot about the importance of remembering. Remembering is the foundation of culture and identity, and our enhanced capacity for memory, well, that's what separates us from all other living creatures. Identity is rooted in knowing and remembering our origin and history, whether it be that of an individual, a family, an institution, a country, or a religion. And identity and meaning are strengthened when we gather and share our stories. This connection between memory, identity, and meaning is the reason that we, as the Jewish people, will once again observe, once again remember Kristallnacht today. Today we remember and honor those who lost their lives on that horrific day and those whose lives were forever changed. As Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, of blessed memory, said, "Without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there would be no civilization, no society, no future." In Judaism, the act of remembering plays a vital role. The words of Yizkor, the memorial prayer, offered 4 times a year on our pilgrimage holidays and on Yom Kippur, are some of the most powerful words our tradition offers. Many in our communities who do not attend services regularly, they attend Yizkor services. They join in the community's prayers in order to honor those they love and have lost. Another example of remembering? Well, think of the very prayers that we recite from our Siddur, words that for some folks are recited every day, even 3 times a day. For others, these words are recited every single Shabbat service. What specific words am I speaking of? The words of the Amidah, in which we call our ancestors, we recall them. We recall our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Where else does remembrance play an important role in our faith? Well, the list is long indeed. Sitting around the Pesach table, remembering the Exodus, wearing masks and rejoicing abundantly as we recall the story of Esther and Mordecai, sitting in a sukkah, gazing at the twinkling stars through our thatched temporary roof, just like our ancestors did in the desert thousands of years ago, parading around the sanctuary while embracing our Torah and recalling the days we received those divine words. Although I could go on and on demonstrating just how important a role remembering has in our wondrous faith, I trust you all get the idea. Remembering joyous events because it warms our hearts to relive those feelings, and remembering horrific events, sad events, because we want to ensure they never happen again. Remembering horrific events such as the Holocaust. Remembering matters because by doing so, we pay honor and tribute to those we lost, those who rescued, who resisted, liberated, and survived that period of time. We remember so that we can teach the lessons learned from the Holocaust and apply them to today's world. We remember so that our children will be made ever aware that along with human beings' ability to create beauty, well, we unfortunately have the ability to create great evil. We remember so that no matter your age or position in society, we all have an obligation to stand up for the good and to resist all forms of expressions of hatred. We know that by doing so, we will all play a part in creating a better world, a world filled with respect, understanding, and inclusion for all. And so I thank you. I thank you all for allowing me to play just a small part in this event, a commemoration to honor those Jews who suffered and who died for Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of God's name, a time that we as a community come together to pay honor, to pay tribute to so many innocent lives lost, a day that we as a community come together to recognize the value of memory and to appreciate that simple yet profound act, the act of remembering. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Mintz, and I am the Director of Community Engagement for the Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon to commemorate Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. Anyone who studies history knows that when hatred of any kind against any group is allowed to fester and then is given permission and oxygen to move into the fabric of society, that it not only endangers the individuals or the communities targeted by that hate, but it actually damages the very fabric of society itself. And certainly the idea of a democracy based on pluralism and diversity. These are some of the lessons that we need to make sure young people, really all people, take to heart and understand. We're not talking about anti-Semitism because we are concerned only for the Jewish community. We are talking about hatred, unchecked, bigotry, discrimination, and really conspiracy theories, an attack on truth. Those are the things that endanger society. That is what we learn when we study the Holocaust, and that is what we must remember as we commemorate and honor and bear witness to the lives and the stories of those who were murdered and those who survived the Holocaust.
Thank you for being here, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Michael Eagle, and I am the board chair of the Florida Holocaust Museum, as well as the chair of the Florida Education Commissioner's Task Force on Holocaust Education. This is such an important day in Holocaust education. For many of us, it signifies the day that the Holocaust started in many fashions. And it's particularly important at the museum because it is often looked at as the day when our founder, Walter Lobenberg, when he was in Germany and his family were victims of Kristallnacht, and he said, he vowed, he was laying in a telephone booth trying to avoid the attack. And he said as a young teenager, this will never happen again. And he made a vow, and it has turned into the museum, and it has turned into the mission. So it's a day of particular weight and particular importance for all of us. And a day where we remember why we do what we do, and we thank Walter in particular for having the vision and to being not only the founder, but for being that cornerstone that we often still turn to, even though he's no longer with us, in order to do what we do and to find the passion and the motivation for what we do. All of the survivors and all of the victims. And I know it's a very difficult time. Anti-Semitic incidents, there's a huge rise statistically. Not only statistically, Jews account for less than 2% of the population, but over 60% of religious-based hate crimes. That is a math equation that should not work and does not work. But these are also opportunities. The fight against anti-Semitism is also leaping into new bounds. For example, at the museum, we have Dimensions and Testimony, which I hope many of you have already seen. And if you haven't, make sure to get here. It uses artificial intelligence to allow you to communicate with a pre-recorded interview from a Holocaust survivor. And this is really a major, major tool and a huge stepping stone in how to still be able to engage with Holocaust survivors when they're no longer here. Now we have a huge arrow in our quiver where somebody can sit and actually engage virtually with a Holocaust survivor. Just a huge, huge step in the right direction. I'm often asked why Holocaust education is important. Why should everybody learn the lessons of the Holocaust? And there's so many reasons, and I'm going to try to target just a couple of them. The first is the never again concept. It is on all of us to ensure that the atrocities that occurred in the Holocaust never happen again. But as the grandchild of Holocaust survivors, I shouldn't even be here. And my story is one example of not only the worst in humanity, but also the best in humanity. And that's such an important component of Holocaust education. So when people ask me why, I often say, because don't all of us need to learn not only what can happen in the worst in humanity, but also the best in humanity. And so all of us can take with us a little bit of the best, and then maybe a little more of the best, and bring that into our day. And that, it's not a math problem, it's not a science problem, but more importantly, it's a way to interact and a way to live and a way to be, because we can all do better, and particularly in difficult times like this, it's these lessons, it's these firsthand accounts. And I've seen it, I can't tell you how many times when I share my family story, for example, how it changes people. And I'm walking proof of it. I wake up every single morning and I remind myself that I'm not supposed to even be here. I'm a miracle. And I challenge myself every day, Mike, what are you going to do today that makes you worthy of that sacrifice? And if all of us just had a little bit of that in us, the world would be even better than it already is. It's what makes me an optimist. And I hope these lessons will turn everybody into an optimist. And I know they can because I've seen it. And these are such important skills, not only for children, which we always focus on the next generation, but also for everyone to learn and bring with them every day. In order to illustrate not only the depths of humanity, but also the heights of humanity, my grandparents would often tell my brother and me about the Garula family. I'm going to tell you about them, and it'll hopefully give you a bit of a sense, not only the way that we teach using individualized stories, not only at the task force level, but also at the museum, but also the importance of how we use these individualized stories to then illustrate the lessons of the Holocaust. My grandparents were farmers in eastern Poland when the war broke out. In fact, they were very young. They were married, and only a few days later, Hitler invaded Poland. They had a little baby, and they were placed into the ghetto just like many other Jews from their town and many other Jews in Poland and many other Jews throughout Europe. With bravery, an amount of bravery I could not even describe or consider, my grandparents gave my aunt to a stranger, their infant daughter, knowing that their life would not be good enough for her in the ghetto and that it would be obviously the utmost danger. They took a risk and they gave their baby to a stranger. Thankfully, they were reunited with her after they survived. But while they were alone, my grandfather got a job teaching a high-ranking Nazi commandant's wife how to ride a horse. Thankfully, because he was a farmer, he knew how to do that. He then got word that when he was finished, the commandant was going to kill him. So they knew that it was time to leave. So they snuck out of the ghetto and ended up in the forest. And they were shepherded around the forest by good people, by non-Jews, who were just doing the right thing. They were serving as upstanders. That's the word we use at the museum, upstanders. There are four kinds of people, we always say: the perpetrators, the victims, the bystanders, and the upstanders. And I like to focus most of my energy on the upstanders, because that's where I think we all need to be. And these upstanders took care of my grandparents and shepherded them from barn to barn and farm to farm, just hiding them. And my grandparents always talked about the Garulas. And one night, they were hiding at the Garulas, and the Garulas came home from church right around New Year's and told my grandparents that there was word in the church that they were hiding Jews. So my grandfather was skittish, not only for my family, but also for the Garula family. And they went off for a night or two just to hide out. Well, that next morning, and there were three other people, I should mention, who were also hiding with my family. The next morning, the police came to the Garula farm. They arrested the Garulas. They found the other people who were still hiding there. They made them dig their own graves, and they shot them on the spot. They then took the Garulas, ransacked the rest of the house, and found a bag that my grandfather had left there because my family had intended to come back a few days later. They brought the Garulas to the police station, and they tortured them for 6 weeks, demanding that they give up where my grandparents were, and they never did. They were both executed for what they did. They left 3 children as orphans, all in the name of doing the right thing and being an upstander. And I know that I would not exist but for what they did. And as I look back at my grandparents and the stories they would tell us, I always think of that one in particular, because I know how important it was for my grandparents to know the value of what these people did for them and did for me. And through the work of the museum, we were able, the research department in particular, we were able to learn not only a tremendous amount of detail about the Garulas over the past couple of years, we were actually lucky enough to have found the last surviving member of the Garula family, who was the youngest child who was there that day. And through the efforts of the research department, we actually were able to Skype with their son during the pandemic. And just a few weeks after we Skyped with him, he unfortunately passed away. So the timing was just amazing. But through that, we also learned about a young man, 25 years old, named Roman Sigolin, who was working with them, who I had never heard of before. In addition to shepherding my grandparents from farm to farm, again in the name of doing the right thing, he and his brother used to disguise themselves as Jews and sneak into the ghetto in order to give people food. And knowing that there are people in the world who are like that should instill in all of us that we all have the upstander in us. And we should all serve as an upstander, whether the issue is big or small, every day. Each one of us owes it to the Garulas to ensure that we continue to serve as upstanders. There will always be perpetrators, there will always be victims, there will always be bystanders, but there will always be upstanders, and every one of us should strive to be one every day. And that is an example, an individualized example, because when you hear the number 6 million, it is impossible for a civilized mind to absorb. That's why we get down into the individualized stories to teach. I hope my story has helped all of you think more about being an upstander every day, think more about Holocaust education, why it's important, be so thankful that we have a state like Florida that continues to want to be the leader in Holocaust education, and anything you can to assist the task force. You can always contact me to assist the museum. We're here. We will continue to battle back. So on a day like Kristallnacht, where we celebrate one of the worst days in Jewish history, it's really, really important to also remember the upstanders, not only the Garulas, not only Roman Sigolin, but the Florida Holocaust Museum, the statewide task force, all of you, because we are all part of this battle together. So thank you again for having me, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Misheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And let us say, Amen.
Hello, my name is Dr. Stephen Covert, and I have the honor and privilege of serving the students and community at Pineview School in Sarasota, Florida, as principal. I'm also humbled to have had multiple opportunities to partner with the Jewish Federation of Sarasota on projects like the Daffodil Project and Holocaust Education and Remembrance Initiatives. Ms. Zaret with the Jewish Federation, Pineview teachers Chris Lenners and Mark Goebel, and many Pineview students have worked on bringing this special project to help everyone remember the Holocaust, the stories of Holocaust survivors, the lives of children and adults tragically lost in World War II, and the hateful rise of anti-Semitism around the world, beginning with Kristallnacht on November 9th and 10th, 1938, the night of broken glass, to life. Kristallnacht began the systematic isolation, exclusion, and deportation of the Jewish people in Germany and areas controlled or annexed by the Third Reich, and resulted in pogroms and the beginning of horrible atrocities all throughout Europe, leading to World War II. Pineview School and her teachers, students, and community are proud to have partnered with the Jewish Federation on this special project, and let us never forget.
This semester, in collaboration with the Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee, Pineview School students had the unique opportunity to be a part of documenting history. High school journalism and multimedia students embarked on a mission of massive scale to interview, document, archive, and tell the stories of local Holocaust survivors and share their feats of heroism, survival, and hope. The journalism students were invited to embark on this perspective-altering journey and were each assigned one survivor to interview and write a story about, while the multimedia students filmed the interviews and created a film documenting the project and its impacts.
But, I do want to say right off the bat, again, repeating myself, that the approach that you will take, I think, is very unique. I mean, there's been lots and lots of books, movies, television shows, presentations, YouTube stories about the Holocaust. However, where you add great value, I believe, is where you talk about how it affects you as young people, as a young generation, and how it's going to ultimately impact your life.
Over the course of several weeks, the students chronicled the resilience and fortitude of Jewish men and women.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was there was this kind of moment early, it was probably the first third of the interview, where we completely deviated from any questions that I had, and after that I stopped using my questions, where she really wanted to tell the story of her aunt who did die and was captured, and that was just really important for me in writing her story, which I'm currently working on. One of the things that I'm working on is how can I also tell her aunt's story and what she told me, because that was clearly so important for her to share.
The cover of this book is like a prayer, the end of a prayer shawl in Judaism. My brother sent me this book, and this book says, this book is dedicated in memory of Moshkovitz Vilmos, my father, was born in 1902 in Hungary and was murdered in 1944. This book says 6 million, okay? This number is permanently etched in the Jewish consciousness. Say the number to anyone An immediate association will be the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis and their collaborators. There are museums like Yad Vashem in Israel. There are days like Yom HaShoah, which is Holocaust Memorial Day. There are special programs, lectures, films, and pictures. Sometimes we need to focus our thought. This entire book contains only one word, and the word is a Jew. It appears in 40 columns, 120 times on every one of the 625 sheets, 1,250 pages. Each page has 4,800 Jews on it. There are 6 million Jews in this book. Flip through the pages, choose out random, hold the book at arm's length. Notice how the words and columns seems to look like nothing more than a design. Then look closer, focus on one Jew. Think of that word as one actual Jew, a relative perhaps, maybe a friend, maybe even yourself.
Their identity.
Don't fall in the trap of hating people. Respect each other. You don't have to love each other, but you can respect each other. Don't ever be violent, and hate leads to violence.
June 1st was my father's birthday. He turned 39 in 1938. And the Jews of Austria are very stressed, but it was his birthday. And it was a beautiful day, and my parents were invited to friends in a suburb of Vienna called Hitzing. My mother couldn't accommodate him, so he went on his own. And while he was gone, 2 SS officers, Nazi officers, came to the door looking for the men. And they see the man of the house, and they look at my mother and say, "Where's your husband? He's not here." "Well, we'll wait for him," they said. They waited and waited. It was time for my father to get back, but he said to himself, he said, "Oh, it's my birthday. I'm going to walk one more hill." And that saved his life, because these SS guys, they got impatient. They said, "We can't wait any longer." And they took the man of the house. As they walked out the front door, my father walked in the back door, just like this. Stage right, stage left. They never saw their friend again.
Journalism is really important. And I think that like doing these stories, interviewing these Holocaust survivors, is absolutely important when it comes to informing people that, hey, the Holocaust is real, like hate is real, racism is real. There's so many bad things in this world that we all live in a bubble towards, or not, we don't all live in a bubble, but some people live in a bubble and just choose to ignore what's going on outside of their own bubble. And I think that like, for me, what it means to fight indifference and to fight for justice is to tell these people's stories, because you can easily look at like a statistic, you can easily look at a piece of paper, you can easily look at a textbook and say like, that's not real, you know? But it becomes real when you meet those people. It becomes real when you hear their stories, and it becomes more than real when you just see how vast the impact was when it comes to things like the Holocaust. You know, like you could say that these things are all in the past, but hate still exists in this world, and we could say history still repeats itself, but history is happening right now. We see stuff going on with Ukraine and with refugees all around the world, and all of these bad things, all of these crises happening, and it can be really disheartening.
I think that people really need to realize that this is something that did happen, and that we need to make sure it will not happen again, because with this experience, it has taught it. I already had an idea that, you know, of what happened and was educated on it, but it really emphasizes when it's not just numbers on a page, it's an actual person telling you their story, that they had to live through this, that people don't realize the atrocities that happened back then, because it's clear that something like this could happen again if we don't work to make this world a better place and to ensure that there's no more discrimination towards these groups of people.
With the resurgence of overt anti-Semitism on a local, national, and global scale, and with the current war between Russia and the Ukraine, it is now, more than ever, that we must learn the lessons from those who witnessed and survived the atrocities of the Holocaust, to not be indifferent to any expressions of hatred and horrors and cruelties of war in the suffering of others.
My name is Ann Stein, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Federation's Holocaust Speakers Bureau since 2014, a position that has enriched my life in many ways. I also have the honor of introducing Helga Melmed, one of our cherished Holocaust survivors, who, with others like her, have shared their stories to close to 15,000 students in the last 7 years. Helga was born in Berlin in 1928. She witnessed and lived through the horrors of Kristallnacht. She has an extraordinary story to share and has made it her mission to educate humanity so that people can know the truth. Helga has been invited to Germany 3 times to share her story. Helga Melmed is a woman with incredible inner strength and courage, a woman who is full of hope and love. Helga was married for 63 years, has 4 children and 4 grandchildren who love her dearly. She is what our Federation considers a living treasure, and we are fortunate to have her with us today. Here now is Helga Melmed.
I am a Jew. Hate, discrimination, violence, evil. This is what I experienced during the years of the Nazi regime. At age 5, I was harassed, my hands beaten bloody at public school. My parents then put me into a private Jewish school. At age 10, school and all my books were burned to ash during Kristallnacht. At age 13, I was taken from my home, my city, my life, and deported to a Polish ghetto. There, both my parents were killed before I turned 14. At age 16, I was transported to Auschwitz. And at 16 and a half, I was sent to a labor camp, where under the eyes of the Nazi soldiers and at gunpoint, I was forced to hard physical labor. I was just a child. At age 17, myself and others were made to walk to another destination, Bergen-Belsen. It was 90 miles away. I learned that fact after the war. And there was little food or water. Most of the others with me either died or were killed on the way. While there, I was terribly sick with typhus fever and consumption. At age 17 and 3 months, weighing a mere 40 kilos and very, very near death, the camp became liberated. The British and American soldiers freed the camp. I was treated at a MASH unit and then taken with a handful of other teenagers to Sweden. At age 18, I was adopted into a Swedish family, and I had 2 little sisters whom I loved dearly. At age 19, I came with a visa by ship across the ocean to a new country, the USA. I went to high school. I worked hard. I learned the English language and then went on to nursing school. At age 22, I became an American citizen on my own. At age 23, I graduated nursing school, took and passed the state board examinations, and married. Today, I have 4 children, and one of my children passed at a very young age, only 60 years old. I also have 4 wonderful grandchildren. In 2016, my husband passed away after a long marriage, long, happy marriage of 65 years. In 2019, I went to Berlin by invitation of the Senate. It was very emotional, but not entirely fearless. I witnessed the planting of Stolpersteine in front of the home where I was deported from at age 13. In 2021, I went to Hamburg and visited the labor camps. This was very difficult, and to see the area and how they changed was more than just disturbing. It was terrible. In 2017, I had the pleasure of visiting Sweden and my little sisters. It was a wonderful trip, and we recognized each other immediately after 70 long years. I no longer hate Germany or all the Germans for taking my teen years away from me. I have forgiven them, but I cannot ever forget. Hate is a terrible thing. It breeds violence and destruction here and around the world. The best way I can think of to combat hate is to love and educate. I survived. I was somehow able to have love and hope in my life after the ugliness and horror of the years. That is my win against hate. How more than ever, let's all try love instead of bringing back hate. A better world is in our hands.
El male rachamim shochen bamromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים ולני שמות כל אחינו בני ישראל שנטבחו בשואה אנשים נשים אוי תתן ובתף שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו, שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם מגן בגן עדן ובגן עדן תהי מנוחתם. ואנה בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם, אדוני הוא נחלתם. ושלום משכבותיהם ונאמר
יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה. בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם על עלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו amen.
The Jewish community has always been motivated by the lest we forget motif. We feel strongly that only by educating people about the lessons of the Holocaust can we prevent such a thing from happening again. Today, this is even truer than ever. We all know about the acts of hatred and violence perpetrated in the last few years, many right here in Sarasota. We must be upstanders, not bystanders, when these heinous events occur. By standing up for what is right, we can together make a difference. The rise of anti-Jewish hate is not just a problem for Jews to solve. It is the harbinger of a cancer in our society that is fostering the spread of hatred against many groups of others. It's up to all of us to act, and to act now. Join members of our Generations After group in reciting the Hands Against Hate pledge as we endeavor to help make ours an inclusive and peaceful community filled with love. Thank you for joining us. Shalom.
I pledge to stand up and resist hate, bigotry, and bullying. I will not stay silent in the face of intolerance. I will work with my neighbors to create kinder, safer, and more inclusive communities for all.